Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and if you know me, parasocially or otherwise, you'll know that I am a big fan and a long-time player of a little game called Roller Coaster Tycoon. Specifically the first game and the second game. The third game I like as well, but it's 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are the kings of the crop. And it just so happens that late last year they only flippin' brought it to Nintendo Switch in the form of Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic. I even reviewed it with my own words. Thanks for noticing. Now, I really like this version. It's great that it's on Switch, some of the controls are really good, but there were a few things that were just kind of not quite there, you know? Certain things that seemed like odd decisions, or, you know, sort of certain things that would really simply but effectively elevate the whole thing, you know? Just little things. And I mentioned these in my review, as you might expect someone reviewing might. And realistically speaking, I thought, well, it'd be nice if they update it, but assumed that would be the end of it. Until yesterday, at the time of recording, we got an email through when I was in the middle of a meeting with the editorial team saying, we've updated Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic on Nintendo Switch, and I was like, ooh! I was hoping they might include some of the things I mentioned, and they did! The email is even titled Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic on Nintendo Switch, now with touch controls. And baby, it's paused. Baby, are there touch controls? Ah! Yeah, in case you didn't know, the original version of Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic on Switch did not have touch controls, which is weird. You know, the touchscreen on the Switch, it's right there. Why aren't you using it? And especially considering that Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic was originally developed for iPad and iPhone and stuff like that. So the idea that it wouldn't have touch controls was a little bit baffling. But now it's here. It's not perfect, I must admit. It's like, for example, you can't scroll like over the screen, like you can't move the park, which feels weird. You can just do it with the right stick. I suppose you're never gonna want to play it without the Switch controls there, so it's not a big deal. But this is... I pressed the money button, but it's actually there. One of the strangest emissions has been fixed. But it's not only that. My God, I don't know what's happening. Why are they listening to me? Why am I important? Because I did say the controls were good, but they're all sort of squirreled away. You don't know how to find the controls. You have to find them in a menu, and whilst that's fine, the game didn't really give you much in the way of tutorialization in order to teach you these controls, because the shortcuts are a little bit weird. Really effective when you get them down, but a little bit weird. There are now tutorials telling you how to do all that stuff. They're not perfect, but they are a vast improvement over what was there before. You can also now change the cursor speed, another thing I raised in my review. I just wanted it to be a bit faster, and now it is. It's a little bit choppy when there's a load of stuff going on screen, and, you know, performance isn't something that's been improved with this patch, at least as far as I can tell. But you can just move the cursor faster now. There's a little thing you can do, either normal, faster, or fastest. I'm surprised there isn't a slower option, but to be fair, normal's pretty flippin' slow. All three of those things were things I mentioned in my review, and I'm not for a moment saying that I am the #1 person and that they were specifically listening to me and it was just my efforts alone that raised all these things and caused these changes to happen. I do think it's a factor, but obviously there are going to be other reviews saying things like, why are there no touchscreen controls and stuff like that. But there is one thing where, as far as I'm aware, this has to be me. It was a really minor thing, but I noticed that the right stick, clicking the right stick, wasn't populated. It doesn't do anything in-game, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. Loads of games are like that. But the map icon is right in the top left-hand corner. It's right for me, but I've got to get it right for you guys. The map was all the way up there, and with the slow cursor speed, it meant that it was a bit of a bore to get up there, and I was like, and yet, the right stick clicking in doesn't do anything. Well, now clicking the right stick opens the map. I feel like I'm losing my mind. They're actually listening. They're listening to me. All of a sudden, several of the gripes I had with the game are now fixed. They're now solved. Because I wrote a review saying that. And again, I'm not saying I'm the sole reason. That would be madness. I'm sure there are other reviews, feedback from, you know, sort of users and stuff like that, that has all gone in to feed this thing. But you can't deny, it can't be a coincidence. Like, they must have read my review. And that's not that surprising. Of course they're going to be reading reviews, but the fact that they read that, took it into consideration, and actually applied those changes that I suggested is baffling. But it's not even the first time. Now, I know I wasn't the only one to mention this, but in World of Goo 2, I reviewed that one as well. There was no support for Pro Controllers. You had to use a Joy-Con and sort of use it a bit like a Wii remote. The problem is Joy-Con don't have great sort of wireless signal with the original Switch. God, I've been talking about the Switch 2 way too much recently. It doesn't have that great a communication with the Switch, and so a Pro Controller, which has a far more solid connection, would have been a lovely choice. There was no support for it, but, you know, it's still using the motion and stuff like that. And then in an update, they did include that. And I know I wasn't the only person to mention that. But even so, you know, these developers, they're actually taking feedback on board. That's crazy. Admittedly, this isn't a new thing. Developers have been paying attention to feedback for as long pretty much as games have been around. However, with the advent of patches and things like that, which again, admittedly, also aren't new, it makes it so much easier to implement little changes, little quality of life improvements, little things to just make the game better, more complete overall. And it's never been easier. Social media, the internet as a whole, it's just so much easier for developers to get that feedback that they're wanting. The only problem is the internet is a big door, and when you open a big door, you only have to have been to Metacritic once to see that there are some people who will happily rate something like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom a 1 out of 10 because they didn't like it, which is... that's not how a scale works. Like, I've probably played a handful of games in my life that are a 1 out of 10. I think I've even given one a 1 out of 10 on the Wii U. I don't want to name names, although you can find it on NintendoLife.com, I'm sure. A 1 out of 10 is something you should basically never give a game, unless it's basically broken or just otherwise completely and utterly worthless without merit and all that sort of thing. I don't think any reasonable person would honestly say that Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom or Super Mario Odyssey or, you know, games for other systems, I've forgotten all the other platforms, God of War Ragnarok, Halo Infinite, Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter World, I don't think anyone, any reasonable person can say with a straight face that they are definitely a 1 out of 10, and that is their honest opinion. You know, just because you put honest in a YouTube title doesn't make it honest. And yet we see this everywhere, and that is, with respect, useless feedback. It's not constructive because it's just saying, it's terrible, it's rubbish, I hate it. You know, some people do it just because they feel that the score that they see for a game isn't representative, so they feel they have to balance it out. That's not how aggregation works. It's just not. And again, with respect, some people just don't really know what they want. I don't want to sound elitist or anything like that. I'm the same. A lot of the time, I don't know what I want. We occasionally get emails from people, presumably usually younger, who think we're Nintendo. And we do get the occasional email, and it is only very occasional, of someone just saying, "Hi Nintendo, you should make a new Pokemon game where all the Pokemon are really cool." Or something like that. And so developers and publishers are getting more feedback than they could ever have dreamed of, you know, 10, 20 years ago. So much data, and yet so much of it is absolutely useless. The challenge now isn't getting feedback. It's getting the right feedback. It's got to be a real challenge these days. A real challenge for developers and publishers. And yet they are still listening. They are finally listening. They've always been listening. It's just now they've got the ears to hear. It's just a shame everyone's shouting at once. But sometimes it works. And I think we can see that with Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic. So I do want to say thank you very much to everyone involved for making my suggestions, and no doubt other suggestions. You know, those aren't the only things. I'm sure it's just the ones they highlighted and then clicking the right stick. That was a surprise. Thank you for making the game better. And thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you check out that subscribe button? We recently updated it, and now it's clickable, so you can subscribe. Do it! And be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. Do it. Do.
Do it. Oh, do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.